So my mom was born December 12th, 1941 in Tyler, Texas, to Bascom Perkins, my grandfather, and Mildred Lamb Perkins, my grandmother. She was their second daughter. They lived in Mount Pleasant, Texas for essentially my mom's entire childhood. She had an older sister named Sherry, who was the third woman to graduate from the University of Texas School of Law. Kay Bailey Hutchison was also in Sherry's class. And she and my mom and Sherry actually were all very good friends for years. Mom actually graduated from East Texas with a degree in library sciences and went to work for Mobil Oil as a secretary, an administrative assistant. And that's actually where she met my dad. They got married about 3 months after they met and were married for almost 55 years before he passed away. They married on December 24th, and Mom said that was the dumbest thing she ever did. Although not marrying him, but just getting married on December 24th. She was like, never got a good anniversary present out of that. They eloped and spent a lifetime together doing lots of adventures. I guess maybe 2 years after they married, Dad was up for promotion to go and be the geophysicist for Indonesia. Mom and Dad actually went to New York. At the time they didn't know it, but who they were really interviewing was my mom to see if she could stand living in a country where the electricity would go off for 3 days at a time. But they were interviewed and they passed. They did a Berlitz course for 3 weeks where they learned Indonesian, and off they went to Jakarta. Mom was the first American wife there and was the only American wife there for the first 6 months of that assignment. About 2 years after being there, she was pregnant with me. She would fly to Singapore every month for her prenatal visits, and so she would laugh and say, over the Straits of Malacca, you were with me. She toyed with the idea of having me there and just showing up and showing my grandparents, congratulations, you have a new grandchild. After she had me, she was very glad she had come back to the U.S. to have me. She said that was a little naive of me to want to do that by myself. After I was about 3 months old, Mom and I went back to Indonesia. We were there for another few years. We were in Dallas for another 5-6 years, then moved to Denver. We were there for 3 years. When I was in kindergarten, Mom returned to work as an administrative assistant, typically the senior admin for one of the executives of Mobil. Mom became the executive assistant for the president of Mobil, and I was with him for several years, and then took her last position where she became a supervisor of a group that oversaw software security. In retirement, Mark and I were both in graduate school at that point, and she would come and see us and spend time with her beloved Scotties or German Shepherds, whichever dogs were in her life at that point. Then she moved down here to Tiki Island for Creighton. We'll all laugh and say it was not the children that got her to move, it was the grandchild that got her and Dad to move down to this area. Some of her favorite adventures were taking Creighton to lunch when he was in preschool. So she would pick him up from his preschool, and at noon they would go to 3 or 4 different restaurants in Galveston, and all of the people in town began to know my mom and Creighton, and they would enjoy seeing what exactly would come out of his mouth or her mouth in regards to what had been the day. And that was one of the beautiful things for them, the relationship they had. Most recently, as we'd moved up to Houston and Creighton was starting at St. John's, his first week, every day he was calling her and saying, this is what I did today. That continued right up to the time that she was in the hospital. The day before she went beyond, he came and spent a couple of hours with her just saying, I love you. Her hopes and prayers and dreams for him, she was saying right back at him. Truly a wonderful thing to watch. She loved art and interior design. She loved history. which I think actually probably fed her love of antiques. You know, most people would have described her as very quiet because at the end of the day, she was very shy. But she had a great sense of humor if you got to know her. She could stand and say something that you'd look at her and say, I can't believe she just said that. She had tremendous integrity. If she told you she was going to do something, she would. She was very kind and always kind of had that gentle reminder that there but for the grace of God go I. And she had a lot of faith. She read a lot. She would laugh and say, oh yes, I was born into the Church of Christ in a small town in East Texas with all of its quirks that come along with being in the Church of Christ. And then she'd smile. And when you get to heaven, there's probably going to be more than just the Church of Christ there. Just keep that in mind, everybody. Don't be startled. My brother, he phrased it really well. He said she was our best friend, and that was both of us. We always knew we could pick up the phone and it'd be a little better after we talked to Mom. We were blessed. I'm so sad she will not see Creighton, quote, grow up, and that he can't pick up the phone and say, guess what, Gigi? If I could learn one thing from my mom, the deep compassion that she had for others, may I hope to have that.